Let me introduce to you the other authors of this paper. Two of them are electrical engineers, as I am. Dr. Ronald DeFour is an inventor. He's an innovator. He invented a new electric motor controller which increases the efficiency of electric motors. This he has patented, and he's in the process of trying to get it sort of commercialized. It can be used in washing machines and air conditioners, as well as big industrial sort of machines. The other engineer is Professor Brian Copeland. Brian Copeland has brought home 2 patents to this country. And the first is the Japan patent, which was clearly done both in engineering and in presenting the patent. We were told that the steel pan was in the public domain for so long that you couldn't patent it. But we were clever, and we arranged such that we have the patent in the Japan in all over the world. The other bit he did was the phi. And what he did was recognize the skill of the steel pans man, as opposed who doesn't know how to play a keyboard. He has made a keyboard in the shape of a pan the same way, etc. So therefore any panist can now play it as though it was sort of a keyboard, both the steel pan and whatever music, etc. Why I'm telling you this is because our people, our engineers, are in fact world class. I mean, we, as many of you out there, we can do as well as anybody else, because I've shown you that Brian, DeFour have patents, world patents, and myself, we can't patent software, so we have in fact sort of copyrighted it. The other author, some years ago, the University of the West Indies asked the 3 of us engineers to form part of a group to advise them on research and innovation. So because the university was talking about listening for 50 years, that we have to diversify our economy, and they recognize innovation, knowledge generation is important. And although we were dabbling in research, we weren't really contributing to this. So we formed a committee of engineers, and we began to look at it. And very quickly we realized that engineering and technology is a fundamental part of what we want to do in trying to diversify sort of the economy, but it's insufficient on its own. We didn't understand enough about the in fact sort of economics and the finance and what it takes. So therefore we went looking for some free labor, and we asked the other author, Clair King, to sort of join us as a development engineer. Some of you know her. She writes in the paper. She was a senator, and etc. And we were able to recognize that engineering is an important part of it, the knowledge generation, the acquisition, the creativity, etc. But without other things, we were dead in the water. This paper represents some of the work that we have done. We have presented to the university. Whether the university will implement it or not is yet to be seen. So if you notice, the name of it is Engineering Underpins Sustainable Development in the Caribbean. One of the problems I had with sustainable, and what sustainable means, is that it tells me that we've got to do something now that doesn't affect the future generations. But right now, in Trinidad and Tobago, we cannot stop producing oil and gas, which is damaging the environment. So therefore, sustainability depends on the present generation being able to live That's what happened in Haiti. Haiti had to live, and the only way Haiti could live is by cutting down every tree. Was that sustainable? But that aside, let's go on. Mr. Walker. I think I'm not in there. And then it will go on for Yeah, I've been teaching for a long, long, long time. And we train them in silos. We train electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, sort of chemical engineers. And worse yet, they don't interact with the economists or the management people or the medical people, or any few of them do this. And when you talk to the engineer, especially those today, they want a degree so they can get a job. But our graduate engineers is just part of this complex learning system that we have to put in place, or we should have put in place, to provide goods and services to the population. And that's about improving the well-being of, in fact, sort of the society. Engineering is not isolated from the other parts of our socio-economic system. What this is saying is, however well they are, however bright they are, their input into the society, developing of society, is hamstrung if there's an associated market failure in the economy. For example, I've listened this morning, and there are few of our engineers in Trinidad and Tobago that's involved onshore, not in the energy sector, in the production of tradables, exportables. 4% of our GDP is from manufacturing that we export. And the only reason we can manufacture that, one, is because it's subsidized, cheap energy, cheap electricity, and on top of that, it's protected. And you've listened, you've read, we have to be able to export sort of globally, etc., but we can't compete. What this paper wants to do, this paper attempts to indicate, in the context of the local and regional economic market failures, how the engineer is affected, but more so, what we can do, how we can sort of do something about this. And well-informed engineers can do that, and of course you're well-informed. I listened this morning to some of the topics that I don't know anything about, but you're good, so you're well-informed, but you're hamstrung. There are market failures that are preventing us from doing what we should be doing. Economy, there's a system in which our people, human resources can exploit our other resources, capital, land, etc. But today, what is important is knowledge, its capacity for creating knowledge so we can improve our living standards. In open economies like ours, the ability to compete internationally to produce tradables is of prime importance because we cannot produce all that we need. Such performance is demanded even to supply the local open market. Why? Because we could import. So if you can't compete with the imports, where are we going? The ability to continually supply improved goods and services of higher quality and added value, even though we're protected by IP, we've got to keep doing it over and over and over. Now we are protected for a while because we are producing oil and gas. So therefore, we don't need to do that yet. And for 50 years, we've been talking about we should be doing that, but we have not done it yet. Hence, the continued exploitation of knowledge, use of technology to innovate is one of the most important factors of economic production. The economist says this. They say, technology helps. But it's the fundamentals that's what is keeping us, that is what will keep us competitive. The obvious corollary of this is that the role of engineers as the country's technology gatekeepers is fundamental to the sustained survival, well-being of the economy of the country. Let me read that again. The obvious corollary of this is that the role of engineers as the country's technology gatekeepers is fundamental to the sustained survival, well-being of this country and the region. I've just told you, if we can depend upon oil and gas, that the foreigners come and invest in, etc., and we are boasting how much foreign investment we've got, then Your GDP per capita looks good. Our GDP per capita looks tremendously good, right? Over 50% of this comes from oil and gas, which is driven by foreign technology and foreign investment. So the question then arises, can such a country's economy be sustainable given the negative impact of the commodity sector on the rest of the economy? The Dutch disease. We can't get people to work in agriculture. Why? Because they won't work for those salaries. Why? Because the oil industry has driven salaries way up. The other problem we have is the depletion of the resource. At the peak of our production of oil, we are up to 275, approaching 300,000 barrels a day. We are down to just 80,000 barrels a day. For the last 3 years, we cannot supply enough gas to Point Lisas. And where's the hope? The hope is that we find oil and gas in the deep. And if we do that, I hope to God we do, it's going to be expensive to find, it's going to be expensive to produce, and right on our doorstep, we have competitors, shale gas, shale oil, and there's new gas that has been found. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are in a mess. Our engineers have got to do something about the diversifying of this economy. But it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take us between 15 and 20 years to do it. But Lloyd Best has been talking about this since I came home in 1968, and nothing has happened. We just continue to exploit our petroleum resource, though doing it so it continues to be one of the largest per capita, the largest per capita carbon polluters in the world. Is that sustainable? To remedy the situation over time to diversify, one fundamental input is required: innovation, innovative engineering. And one of our professors, Anthony Clayton, Hewitt, tells us it's not incremental innovation, fixing, twisting, etc. It's got to be disruptive. We've got to do something which can protect our market for a while. We have to jump ahead. We can't catch up. But we haven't been able to do it. And UE has been putting out engineers since, 50 years, 60 years? And we now have UTT that's putting out. Why? I read a very important article a couple of years ago by John Foster, From Simplistic to Complex Systems in Economics. This states that economies, and I'll read this, are complex adaptive in that they can exhibit a degree of structural irreversibility due to the bonds formed during the development. What this does, it inhibits our ability to adapt if there's a discontinuity. We just can't adapt. So TNT apparently is unable to respond to this threat, the threat of depleting resources, right? The threat of cheap shale gas, the threat of new finds all about the place. So what Foster is telling us is the history of the local plantation economy has created certain rigidities such that the local private sector is loath to invest in risky endeavors. Just drive up the Churchill Roosevelt sort of highway. On the left is the huge Massey Superstore. Go into it and see what I'm talking about. Continue up, and just as you turn off the Omiara Road, there's a huge mall. Go in it and see what's in it. And these are the investments that we are making. Why? According to Foster, our history has bequeathed that to us. But this isn't new. Since 1950, the paper by Sir Arthur Lewis, The Industrialization of the British West Indies, he noticed the reticence of the regional private sector to engage in risk-taking in the development of the regional industry. What all of this points to is the market failure in the region, the failure to seize economic opportunities, and in particular create goods and services for export. Hence, the economies suffer from our economy in particular, suffer from the boom-bust boom as the world prices and demand for commodities oscillate. Just think about what happened in '86, and then what happened again, what just happened before 2009, what happened after 2009, what's happened now. Just think about it. That's how we're living. We know that we got to increase our productivity. Everybody tells us that. So to do this, any country has to produce well-trained engineers, highly skilled engineers, and we need to require the knowledge to use it, and we need to create with it. Now, our governments have kind of understood it. In TNT, the government got involved in providing supply-side policies. The acquisition of knowledge, the production of human capital, the S&T faculties. UWI has been producing engineers since 1960. They have built sort of UTT. We've done all that. And what was hoped is that these graduates, these entrepreneurs, will seize the existing economic opportunities, the horizontal incentives, and we will build our economy. It didn't happen. The TNT government has already directly addressed certain sectors of the economy, certain things in agriculture, downstream energy, tourism. So we're giving grants if you want to build a hotel or restructure your hotel. We built the Point Lisas and we said, wow, the private sector is going to go downstream. They didn't. However, the Washington consensus, those who knew, they told the government, not these broad horizontal things, focus on industries, on companies, etc. So they said, give grants to people to do R&D, tax credits. If the company is want to sort of retool, give them a tax credit for this, which we did. The subsequent experience showed that this accent on individual firms did not do enough in general to cause spillovers. It didn't improve coordination among the various institutions. A Silicon Valley didn't happen. In TNT, the government introduced tax rebates for firms. As I said before, nothing happened. And of course, the showpiece, however, was the creation of the import substitution program, intended to protect the new industries until they became competitive. Remember, we had assembly plants for cars, we assembled bulbs, we assembled whatever. And what was the hope? The hope was that if they have enough experience, then we could open up the market and they will export. That didn't happen either. As soon as we opened up the market, what happened? They closed down, and with the gas and oil income, we imported. Again, the risk-averse private financial sector preferred to invest in supplying the day-to-day low risks wants on the onshore sector, generally import markup. This morning, I spoke to one of the bankers there, and I said, what are you going to do for these engineers? She said, what? I said, a lot of them have bright ideas, and they want a loan. They want to exploit these ideas. She said, well, if we are happy with what they're going to do, then we will lend them the money. I said, but they themselves don't know if they're going to succeed, but it might be sort of a good idea. She said, no, we got to ensure that we get our money back. I said, okay. I said, if I put money in the bank and you lend it out, yes, you should get it back. I agree with that. But you're making billions profit. Put aside 15% or 20% of your profit and build an innovation fund if you're going to develop this country. It hasn't happened. But to be fair to the UTC, this was one of the plans that the UTC intended to do. Let's go on. We have been producing engineers who are sort of critical to our development. The onshore economy has misused this. So much so, there was a recent paper by the IDB, sort of Rupra, which he asked, is there Caribbean sclerosis? And they claimed, this is the IDB, that 79% of our graduate workforce emigrates. 79% of our workforce emigrate. These are the people we were training to build the economy. We are training them for export. And on top of that, there's not much money coming back like into Jamaica, you know. The region, they're producing well-trained engineers, but the local economy, with the market failure, we cannot use this knowledgeable human resource. Today, the lifeblood of the TT's energy sector is foreign investment. We are boasting about how much investment we are getting. In sort of the papers today, we're talking about the billions of dollars of investment into the Caribbean, and we get in the lion's share. The problem with that, the historical fact continues to dictate to governments the view that economic development is about attracting foreign investment. You hear the Minister of Trade telling you this, I'm signing that, and etc., and I'm hoping that people will come. We built Tamana Park, we're building parks all about the road, expecting that people will come and put up plants and give us jobs. We don't have to do anything. Yet, the governments are about the supply side, improving the ease of doing business. We want to increase our position in the competitive forum index. And we are gateway to South America, so people will come here to work. Even the International Financial Center, what are we saying? Well, the big companies will come and rent space, so therefore they could run their banks from here. Fine. But what do we do? The conclusion from above is Trinidad and Tobago and possibly the rest of the region, according to Foster, found themselves structurally bound by their histories. Unaided, they cannot jump from the periphery of the global production space into the higher value products and services. They're incapable of adapting to the new demands of the society's survival and opportunities presented by the global market, even though the education system is providing you engineers. However, the production of such engineers is insufficient in the strategic management of the economy towards its diversification if the rest of the production system is not here. The task then goes beyond supply side, demand side, vertical, horizontal, whatever, as part of it. And this is what happened when we, as the R&I group from the university, when we looked at it, then we realized it's pointless looking inside the university for innovation. We have to turn our backs to it and say, right, you all could support us, but the problem is in the society. The approach taken in this paper is reminiscent of that adopted by the Chilean government. The Chilean government have a public partnership, if you like, with sort of ITT. And the way they do it is they identify a technologically innovative product, invest in it, and if it wins, then they sell it, and they go look for something else. The partnership, for example, provided the Chilean salmon farm, Salmonesa Antarctica, and then sold this highly successful venture to Japan. So the larger Chilean industry was modified by learning, by looking. And you know, of course, I mean, at one time, sort of salmon was something that we probably had once a year or such like. Now, you know, it's knocking dog in price mat. Because Chile has now learned how to farm salmon, and they flooded the market, and they're making money. However, the production of such engineers is insufficient in the strategic management of the economy. The task then is sort of beyond that. So therefore, there's a need to genetically modify the current economic system. And I use the word genetically deliberately. The conclusion from the above is that TNT and possibly the rest of the did I read that? I think I pressed the wrong one. Yes. Right. The strategic management of the economy. A realistic objective could be to create an economic system that can adapt to the uncertainty of the future. So the economists call this an experientially organized economy, in which technology demands ensure the star role for engineers. Technology is going to drive us, and we are the gatekeepers of technology for this country and the region. They depend on us. The key is to create a new embryonic adaptive economy by building new adaptive and a new adaptive and innovative spiral in which actions set off by the spiral expand and build on their old momentum towards a greater adaptability. What it means is that happened in sort of Silicon Valley. There was some knowledge on digital systems, etc., and it wasn't in one industry, it wasn't in one company. It suddenly began to use it to make this, to make that, to make the other, to make that. Look at Samsung. Look what happened in South Korea. You know Samsung used to make buckets and stuff. Samsung is now competing with Apple. Such a spiral constructs and interconnects institutions, local and global networks. It builds redundancy, the symbiotic partnership clusters that can respond to uncertainties in the future. The future has changed drastically since 2009, 2008. And so we saw it coming. Climate change, rising sea levels, whatever. The finance system collapsed. Okay. Then we're talking about we don't have enough food to feed the people. We don't have enough potable water. All of these things. We talk about renewable energy because of sort of what we're afraid of. So it's uncertain what's going to happen. We are talking about maybe we should build solar panels. Maybe we should go to Guyana and build solar panels. China's cornered that market. Remember what was said by Professor Clayton, right? We have to be disruptive. We cannot follow. And that's why you're engineers. The National Innovation System. The Innovation Diamond, I'll come back to it. It consists of created centers of excellence that focus on R&D directed at economic development and services to the innovative and emerging entrepreneurs. But you say, but we have UE. UE can do that. We have UTT. UTT can do that. They were not constructed to do that, and they cannot do it. UE employs me and others there to teach. They say, if you publish, we will promote you. Think about research, development, patents, contract. So we don't do it. To do. The Innovation Diamond is designed using the framework of the triple helix, which was first introduced by Henry Eckrowitz. Formal institutions have to be established to manage and provide these activities among the redirected universities or new R&D institutions. And these activities have to be integrated and interconnected with a finance infrastructure, a test market, market development with a scope that includes the global market. That's a diamond. So there is the learning systems, R&D, UTT, whatever, a redirected UTT with centers of excellence, entrepreneurs, test markets, finance, legal, organization, that kind of thing, etc. Which Eckrowitz has been talking about this for years, has been used. Brazil. When Brazil, the people from the agricultural region began to move into the cities in Brazil, they couldn't feed them. What Brazil did was built a research institution called Embrapa. That now employs over 3,000 engineers, and Brazil is one of the biggest exporters of food today. While 30 years ago, it almost couldn't feed itself. So the important thing is we've got to build these centers, the research centers, the development centers, which will feed the engineers. There was one engineer standing here 2-3 hours ago, and he complained exactly about that he's not being supported by our universities. Yeah. There are two initial processes of the innovation diamond. It's a lot we've did, and I don't have enough time. I'm begging for a little bit more. The two initial one is sort of legitimation, and the other is foresighting. Legitimation, after we decide what we're going to do, we've got to fund it. And the private sector is not going to fund it. The banks are not going to fund it. The government's going to fund it, and they have to fund it from what little resources they've got. So therefore, the public is going to be hurt. The government is spending 50% of its income in transfers and subsidies. So if you've got to fund this, that has to drop. And if that's dropped, the public is going to hurt. So therefore, they've got to know that this is what we are trying to do, this is what the governments are trying to do, etc. And it has to be a government intervention. People are talking about this development is private sector driven. It's not. It was not so in South Korea. It was not so in Singapore. It was not so in Taiwan. It was not so in Ireland. Why should we so here? The other things we have to include is the management and the protection of sort of intellectual property, business support for innovation, entrepreneurship, facilitating market and market development, and all of these things. So those processes which I've shown you in the diamond, that's going to take years. It's going to take, if we were to start now, it's going to take 10, 15 years to do. And that's the problem. It jumps across governments. And it'll be difficult to keep, as you've seen, it's difficult to keep projects across governments because, well, I don't have to go there. Legitimation. The diversification and building of new specialized economic factors, the human resource will cost money. I've told you all about that. And it could hurt the population, and we've got to watch that. And so therefore they've got to know, right? I mean, right at the moment now, for instance, we have free tertiary education. Beautiful. But 79% of our graduate labor force is emigrating. What are we doing? The next one is foresighting. How do we decide what to do? Do we build a port? Do we go into printing and packaging? Do we go into financial services? Do we expand our tourism? Etc., etc., etc. There's all of them there. What do we do? What we need to do is to develop some highly specialized skills in our export market. And we shouldn't pick one and see how we can do that. We need to come up with a technology that can do lots of things like what happened in Silicon Valley, right? With that, they can make flat TVs, they could do anything, they make cell phones and whatever. Smart fridges and whatever. So therefore, we are looking for this enabling technology that will sort of allow us to do it. And we don't have it. The stuff that we are exporting, the technology we are using is basic. So and as sort of Horseman told us, we are operating on the periphery of the world product space. So therefore, we can't jump from one tree, as he called it, to another tree because they're too far apart. We can't jump from one product to another high-tech product because the technologies are too far apart. So we need a foresighting exercise. And it's not good enough to say, well, maybe we should do that because that. Of course, people talk about that. Look at our comparative advantages. We have a good cocoa, they say. All right. But we're not going to be able to sell cocoa in crocus bags. What are we going to do with it? It's fine cocoa. Are we going to sell it in a better-looking bag such that they blend it, etc.? Who's going to make the money? Cadbury, Rowntree's, not us. So therefore, even our comparative advantage, we need knowledge and creativity how to exploit it. So as I was saying there's an initial exercise that has to be undertaken to select the technologies or the industries. And there's a method to do that. I don't have the time to talk about it for citing how you do it, but it is done. The other thing is financing, money. If we don't have the money to do it, we can't do it. In TNT and the region, the history has inevitably bestowed this role of financing to governments. Governments have to do it. The banks are not going to do it. They're not going to do it. And don't expect that foreign investment is going to come to do it. But you see, but wait, they sort of went into Ireland. They went into Ireland for two reasons. One, that was the US jump-off ground into the EU, which was a huge market. And plus, of course, the universities in Ireland were top class. Our universities are good. But this gateway talk about South America, that's a joke. So our government will have to do this. Though it's expected that the local private sector will participate in financing that, it could be encouraged directly to do so, and this is important, by government assuming the risk via long-term bonds to the private sector, which can provide the high-risk funding for the economy. Eventually, the local private sector will do it. That is it. The government will fund it, R&D, to our UE or UT, our centers of excellence. The government, the non-government investors will buy bonds. Why? Because we get in 3%, 4%, and whatever happened, whether the world collapse, we get in 3%, 4%. That's fine. But the government's going to use that money in a venture capital fund, and they will take the risk. Meaning, all of us will take the risk, right? Not the investors. And this is what we then plug into the stuff that come out of the etc. and whatever. And when the companies run, I'm going through this very quickly. You'll get a copy somewhere, right? And so when the companies are up and running and etc., then, for instance, some of the money the government will use to pay back the bonds, etc. And eventually we'll do like Chile and sell the companies, right? But this is what the private sector is keen about. Why don't we sell Phoenix Park? Because government should own Phoenix Park. We should own it. Why didn't you take the risk before and build a Phoenix Park? So the private sector is willing to invest in something that is operating and making money. Good. So when we get them, then we will sell them and pour the money back. The HSF that we have, the HSF is $5.5 billion US at the moment. What are we doing with it? Oh, it is for, part of it is the legacy for our coming generation. What are you going to do? Are you going to give them a check of $1,000 in the next 15 years each? Well, they're doing that in Alaska. Why not use it to build this economy and give them the legacy of an economy? Oh no, the people won't like that. Then people say we are small. But one of my colleagues was talking here about smallness, and he didn't feel he was small, right? I mean, he was showing the world what he could do with wind energy, right? So smallness is not a constraint. In a recent report by the IDB, there's claimed that though the average growth rate of small economies is 3.5%, is lower than the rest of the world, its standard deviation is higher. What that means is that we on average, we're not so good, but there are some of us that are outperforming everybody. Those are the ones that could drive the turnaround in this country. This implies that smallness is not a binding constraint on economic growth, something that is widely, the economists talk about it, etc. We, as the engineers, we have to know that it's not that we're too small. We can't build everything, but those that we can build, we can be world class. As my two colleagues showed you, right, that they went out into the world, setting up in St. Augustine, etc., and got patents. What negatively affects the growth of small economies include low productivity, low competitiveness, weak institution. Hence, any growth constraint imposed on the regional entities by size can be overcome by diversification that focuses on innovation, building the relevant private sector to compete in the new global sectors. We've got to build this innovation diamond. Let me conclude. Immediate focus should be on the national restructuring of the various regional economies. We talk about it, We're not doing it. We have to aim to generate specialized economic factors, particularly the human resource and the relevant institutions. Choose general and a limited number of technology areas to become globally competitive, even utilizing the nation's comparative advantages. Examine the history and the current structure of the economy and put in place an embryonic entrepreneurial innovation systems that will come to maturity in 15 years using the triple helix framework. Ensure that the financial system is also in place. The local and international linkages are of fundamental importance, a system that can acquire, implement, and innovate in the chosen economies. When I saw this conference advertised, and they said it was a technical conference, I wrote and I said, we've got to do something like this. I got a question. We put it to the board, but they don't think the conference should be that. I said, I didn't say the conference should be that. I said, we've got to discuss this because this is what we have to do or we will die. Though our economists admit that the technology of which engineers are the gatekeepers is the major and specialized economic factor today driving global competitiveness, their apparent lack of the detailed appreciation of the various technical opportunities that the changing global market offers presents a unique opportunity for the region's engineers to assume the leadership in fostering regional economic diversification. I listened to you all today in various areas, and you all are, at the top of the technologies. In water, in roads, in whatever, right? So what are you doing? What are we doing? And I'm saying our engineers did it before in Point Lisas, right? We built it, and we began to run it, and then we sold it. You know why? Because we owed money on it. So we sold the asset to pay off our debts, not recognizing that it's the assets that would have paid the debts. We sold plants with money in the bank. But this rule cannot be grasped if the profession isolates itself in technology silos, ignoring the concepts of this presentation. Thank you.
I'm Lennox Sergio Singh, President of the Toronto Local Content Chamber. Our motto is building capacity and sustainability. And therefore, whenever we see discussions on sustainable development, aspect of our national enterprise, we are more than interested.
We are more than, excuse me, I missed you.
Interested.
Right.
I look at the magazine on page 16, Dr. King, and we really like the definition of sustainable development, which says development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And I want to say that there could be no better preparation for the future generations to meet their needs than through local content.
Through local
content. Their capacity building. If we are going to commit the future generations to repaying large loans for projects that we do now, and at the end of the day, they don't know anything, they have no capacity, then what are we going to continue to do? And therefore, in the context of this theme here today, and the Caribbean, I want to maybe suggest to APEC and this conference that we to look at sustainable development in the Caribbean. Neighbors. Incidentally,
I agree with that. Go ahead.
As regional, yes.
Go ahead.
So far as we are concerned, CARICOM is local. And therefore, I want to suggest that we look at the attempts at neocolonialism in the economic sphere, where they no longer control us politically, but perhaps they are doing subtly. I know these are harsh words. My chamber once referred to what was happening as economic apartheid. And we have to seriously address these things. If we are going to build our country, we cannot do it by compromising the ability of future generations to do their own development. I thank you.
The only reason that we can afford at the moment to import food, to import anything, is because we have oil and gas. We cannot we cannot make all that we require. We are a small country. We cannot make it. So therefore, one of the biggest problems is we have to increase our export, etc. And you're perfectly right. We cannot increase our exports unless we build capacity and capability. We build capacity and capability, we have to build it in the technologies in which we can compete globally. And therefore, that's why I was talking about building the research and development centers which develop these technologies. Right. I'm not sure what you meant by local content. If you meant by local content, sort of providing resources or support for locals, so therefore we will continue to construction, which yes, of course we have this. Construction is not a tradable. If we should continue to build the malls, which is not a tradable, etc., fine. But what is driving us is we have got to be innovative, disruptive, innovative, and export. And our export basket at the moment is nothing that will allow us to jump off on. We can sell our exports in the regional market, and you know why. We cannot sell them abroad because they are not competitive. So therefore, yes, I agree with you, but building capability and etc. The problem is, for instance, I sort of agree with you that we cannot leave debts that we cannot pay for the next generation. But the problem is that we are leaving them an unsustainable future if we do not build an economy that can do it, etc. And to build an economy, the foreign investment is not going to build it for us. Look at what they've done in the energy sector, right? They have not built our economy. In fact, the energy sector. We are rent seekers. We are seeking rents from them all the time, etc. We have not done anything there. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Hi, Chris Maharaj, UE. Are you an optimist or pessimist that government will indeed make the change to diversify by engaging in foresighting exercises and having a formalized and functional national innovation system?
That is the unfortunate thing, is that what we have seen, and given the rigidities I talked about, I can't see it because it hasn't happened for 50 years, and I don't see any initiative that the private sector will do to themselves. And I've read, I've listened, I've seen what has happened in other countries, and it has to be that kind of thing. However, it's the responsibility of this association, of that chamber, etc., to insist that this is what we want. Calling them to come and address us at a chamber's breakfast, etc., and don't have a clue about what to do. It's for us to stop it, right? And it's we put them there, right? And if, for instance, we then said, we can do nothing. I'm not an optimist that the government will do it. I'm an optimist that we can insist that this be done.
I hear you concerning the training engineers in silos and the need for us to be more innovative. What is being done now? You are part of the University of the West Indies.
Of course.
Dr. Chris Maharaj, who just asked that question, is part of the University of the West Indies, head of mechanical engineering department. What is being done to shift the paradigm, so that the young engineers that come out here are imbued with some of what you are saying to make a difference?
It's an unfair question. Nothing. Nothing. We worked for 3 years on the R&I thing. And we presented it to the highest levels in the university. The university has adopted the word, we are innovative university. How? It says to us that we should publish, etc. And what? Nothing. You know, I mean, I'm saying, and this is what happened to the three of us, the four of us. This is why we turned for help. That when we looked at it, it was the university could not do it alone. There wasn't the money, there wasn't the finance, etc. And there was let me tell you a story. This young man, DeFour, a strange fellow, he sat in his lab and he did his work and he did his work and he did his work and he got the patent. And then he said to the university, I want to write up my PhD. Now the university says to him, have you got a supervisor? He said, no. He said, okay, we will appoint a supervisor, and it normally takes 3 years for you to do your PhD. He said, but I've done it. They said, but you know, whatever. He was almost in tears. They appointed a supervisor, and the supervisor met him inside of the car park and said, I would like to see your work to see if I approve. Well, I won't repeat what he said to the potential supervisor. What he did, he came to me and I said, I'll tell you what. I said, I know what you have done for 3 years. Brian Copeland knows what you have done for 3 years. Professor Julian knows what you have done for 3 years. We will write to the university and tell them that, one, we know you did it here, etc. And the other thing, as the university, is to reward its staff members for original work. And that's how he got his PhD. Although, even at the highest level, there was objections. And the condition was, although he had a patent, it's good work, we need to get one of the best in the world to look at the work to see if it's good. An institution that is not built for innovation cannot innovate. Any questions?
Isa?
Prof. King, I have to start off by saying that I found the presentation to be fascinating and poignant.
Fun.
And as you were going through, I made notes for questions, and surprisingly, I would find that maybe 2 slides down, you would answer the question. So thankfully, I only have one question from the angle of a devil's advocate. So you touched on the point about that smallness is not a constraint,
yes,
right? The question that I had in mind really is connected to that, as to whether we are bound by our geography and demographics. So what your answer to that on the slide was that there are small states or small economies that, based on, even though the average is smaller growth, that in some cases, because of the standard deviation, you have the successes, and of course the opposite of that, you must have the failures to even things off. The question really is how many out of those economies, the small economies that show positive growth, high positive growth, how many of those economies, and what are the examples of those economies that are based on technology and based on R&I and R&D?
Taiwan used to export those things like umbrellas. God, it slipped my head. Taiwan used to export vegetables. Taiwan decided, Chai Chong, I can't remember his name. He got a group of engineers and economists together, and he says, tell me what to do. And they told him what to do. Today, their semiconductor industry is the best in the world. Right? Singapore started early, but they were fortunate that they were also a sort of entrepreneur nation, right? And they attracted sort of investment, so they began to do it. And then what did Lee Kuan Yew? So what did he do? He decided he had to build his universities and his innovation centers. That's what he did, and he innovated. That's what they did. Ireland did the same thing, except according to Porter, they used too much foreign investment, which makes them sort of highly volatile. Sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Just want to point.
I'm sorry.
We have a number of people lined up to have questions. I'm taking 3 more questions. There's a panel discussion tomorrow morning. We should provide a venue to ask a lot more of these things. So just
Yes,
keep that
ask
in
it.
mind. So 3 more questions.
And the sort of cocktails are after, so don't take up too much time. Go ahead.
Now, I was involved with the Phoenix Park gas processors
Yes.
plant project. And let's say $1 billion project. Engineering, the intellectual input would have been something like 25%. Hardware, probably about 25%. Construction costs and putting it together, the rest. The value of providing services, especially engineering services, has a very high economic value.
Right.
Yet we are not making much use of it.
Perfectly right.
The next stage is we are English speaking. We live with about 5 million of us, Jamaica, down to Guyana and Belize.
That's right.
And around us we have over 100 million people speaking Spanish. So when I was president of APET, I was promoting that engineers should learn Spanish and we can export our services. Because right now I'm involved in a company that we are working in Panama, providing ground improvement and construction engineering services. And I think this is what we as an island need to do is get out, export, and move on.
That's right. No, he's right. This is why I talked about sort of foresighting. I mean, I couldn't tell you what to do right now, but there's a methodology. The point which is made, there's one of your service people, one of your service companies that was started here. God, the name has slipped me, and he started supplying things to dig in the ground and some chemicals, etc., etc. And eventually, he began to do the same thing in Venezuela. And then he was doing some of the stuff in Colombia. And what it turned out is that he was part of the research and development in shale gas. So what you're saying, and you're perfectly right, is that our service companies should do what I'm saying, begin to innovate and begin to go outside and begin to look what else do they want, etc. God, I can't remember that company, but I'm sure you know who it is. Their local company still carries the same name, but the headquarters of the main company is in sort of the US at the moment, and they were part of the shale gas sort of development, etc. That is what I'm talking about. That is what our engineers should be doing. I mean, you know, but fine, the money is important, right? And I'm sure the finance is important, and risk is what we have to take. And if somebody says that we have saved $5.5 billion in the Heritage Fund, and we need to leave it for our progeny, and we can take the risk of using part of it to build a new economy, and we don't take that risk, I think we are doing a disservice to our children.
Alan Stewart from the Tobago Emergency Management Agency. I tried to remain seated for a while, very quiet. but I think you forced me to say something or to ask a question rather. In the final analysis, based on all that you have said, I recognize that there is a need, or there is something really wrong with how we look at governance. And my bold question to you is to push you a little further to state where do you think we will get our next breed of governance to really take us where we ought to be. In my own opinion, I can conclude that the entire state of affairs need engineering.
Of course.
And therefore, in your mind, where do you think we'll get that pool of persons to deal with the present crisis that we have, and that for the future, in regards to the whole, to find the right pegs for the whole?
Somebody asked a similar question before. I just bought a couple of months ago, I bought a book, Rethinking Development by this IDB. And the IDB addressed the same question, a similar question of change of governments and the continuum, especially since we talk about 10, 15 years, you know. And what they're saying, for instance, is one of the ways to get around that is a joint partnership with the government with respect to this kind of thing, etc., where the private sector, and when I say the private sector, I'm talking about people like the engineering associations, the chambers, the economics association, etc., who, for instance, working with the government, this is where we're going. And they're powerful people. You pay your taxes and etc., etc. So therefore, if a government changes and they come and say, well, we're not doing that, I mean, you can't just sit down and say, well, sorry, we're doing that. Right? And so therefore, we are not helpless. Right? And the government needs us to pat them on their backs and etc., which we do for nothing. You know, get together. This is one of the most powerful institutions in this country, right? And we've kept it together. It's not an electrical institution and a mechanical institution. It's an engineering institution. We are very powerful. And when you look around, we have people who are my age, right, who've been here a long time. And the youngsters, like this one who's just coming in and etc. We have that power. Use it.
Anthony Chady, I'm the VP of APET Operations. My question, in fact, I just want to make a comment. I think we're all too happy in Trinidad and Tobago. We have a lot of things that are going for us, and we're not seeing what is happening. First of all, NIHUS, they have an Innovation and Research Awards, right?
Yes.
They do something like that. I mean, you laugh, and if it is not good, well, why does the university get involved and make it better?
I told you.
The Prime Minister has Innovation Awards every year, right?
I missed the last sentence. The Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister office, there's a Innovation Award given to people,
yes,
right, for entrepreneurship, innovation, and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's eye to eye.
Right, so, I mean, we talk about innovation, and there are things happening. So, the universities and technical schools need to get together, right, as well as APET, and need to probably make it better and probably sustainable. So there are things happening.
That's right.
The other question, the other comment I want to make is that I'm a product of UE, and I'm happy to be a product of UE.
So,
I think it has
I teach them.
grown, yes, you taught me. Abstract control systems at the master's level, right?
I know.
A very difficult topic, I must say. The question is that there are a lot of projects the university does with the students, especially final year projects, right? And I've been the chairman of the IT. I have had the privilege to look at a number of projects. They are very innovative. But after the projects are done and presented, it sits on a shelf.
Yes.
It stops right there.
Yes.
Right? I think there needs to be a link to commercialize some of these projects into probably public sector and private sector.
That's right.
How can
That's right.
the university bridge that gap, or the technical schools bridge that gap to get the projects, the innovative projects, out into the commercial arena?
When I joined this university, I was 29 years old, and I was under the impression that we could build this country from the bottom up. We can't do that. When I was asked, I chaired the R&I committee, and when we began to look at it, then it hit us. It took 9 months, a year. It hit us. The university cannot do it alone. The university is not equipped to innovate. And this is why, for instance, we went clear off the rails as far as the university is concerned and developed a system. The university has a role to play. The university is going to promote me based upon my publications, right? Not in my teaching, my publications. And they made me a professor, and I behaved myself. When I was 41 years old, I was made a professor. After that, I published nothing. But I built stuff. I built software systems and etc. I wrote nothing. I was still thinking that from the ground we can build it. Until I understand, it's not that. The university is one, the university with centers of excellence, where people are employed to do research, to make things, and they are rewarded on making things and putting, and you spin them out as entrepreneurs. I suggest that we can pick them. We can pick 6 of them, 10 of them out of each class and have a new stream, the entrepreneurial innovation stream, where we are putting them into the centers of excellence to do exactly that. But we can't do it. You know why? The government was giving universities so much money for sort of research. When they built UTT, they split it in 2. Talk to the deans and the principal. We have no money for research work. Right? When you consider, for instance, the little company that I'm running, when I have 5 or 6 people working in a project, right, and I'm paying them $10,000 a month, and a project is going to take me 2 years, what does $500,000 do? Nothing. So unless we have the financial backing, unless, as you saw from what I showed you, unless that government grant isn't coming in, unless the VC funds aren't coming in, you could have as many projects as you like. Who's going to do it? Who's going to fund it? Nobody's going to fund it. I tell you, the bank told me just now, right, that they need to get the money back. So therefore, I'm taking it a step further. I have to mortgage my house. This is exactly what DeFour has done. He's mortgaged his house. So it's not the projects. It's not that you all aren't bright. You all are very bright people. We are, oh, for God's sake, I taught some of you. That is not the problem. The problem is the rest of the economic development system does not exist. And it has to be driven by the government. And we have to get together in the associations and tell them what they have to do. I think you need a drink. Thank you very, very much. I really enjoyed this.